Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for the highly anticipated return to the MCU, of course being Black Widow. And this, of course, is the prequel that we've been waiting for Natasha Romanoff to get. We finally get to see her on this mission where basically she's going after the organization that pretty much fucked up her entire childhood, but also get a deeper look into her family life and what really got her to this point overall. So Black Widow, I was very excited for this film. I mean, look, just the fact that I'm able to sit here and talk about a Marvel movie in theaters again really excites me because it has been so long since we've been able to say that. I mean, the last one that was in theaters, of course, was Far From Home. This was supposed to come out all the way back in May of last year, but obviously due to coronavirus and things like that, this was one of the first films that really ended up taking the heat and really devastated me because I really thought this film could have, I really was excited for this one. I thought it was going to be something really special, and it's finally come out, and like I said, I've been really excited for this because I feel like we've always wanted to see a Black Widow movie. This is a character whose past has been shrouded in secrecy. She's been someone that, isn't too detailed about her past, but we know some of what she's gone through, but there's a lot of things that we still don't know. We don't know the full extent of what happened to her, so it really seemed like this film was going to do a good job in diving into that and giving us some clarity on some things, but but also it was strange to me because obviously this film is coming off the heels of Endgame, in which, spoilers for those who haven't seen Endgame, which, why haven't you? Why are you watching this video if you haven't seen Endgame at this point? The character's dead. The character's dead, and I really didn't know how this film was going to work, but once they announced it was going to be more of a prequel, I was very much on board for it. I was really hoping this film could be something special, and for the most part, I do think this film does deliver. Now, that being said, it's not quite as good as I really wanted it to be, and I don't think it's top tier MCU, but I think overall it's still a pretty effective prequel that does what it needs to do in filling the gaps for Black Widow's character overall. But we are just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. Comes to the MCU, that's one of the things I feel like they always succeed at. They always do such a great job of, trying to get a really talented group of actors, but also actors that really do fit these roles. I mean, they really do not miss most of the time when it comes to casting here, and with this film, very much they've gotten it right again. I think everyone really does kill it in this film. I think there are some really strong performances here. Obviously, Scarlett Johansson is fantastic as this character. She always has been, but obviously in this film she has a little bit more to deal with. There's a lot that she is going through because she's very determined to take down this organization, but you also do see the way that she's processed a lot of what she's had to deal with as a kid, and I think that's another area in which Johansson really does shine here, because Natasha is a very stoic character in this film. She doesn't express her emotions frequently, but when she does, it's very effective. There's one scene in particular that I think she did a really strong job with, and I really like what she ended up doing in this film. I think especially in the third act, she really has some strong stuff to do here, and it just reminds us how good she is as this character. It's going to be sad that we're probably not going to see her again, and this is the last we're going to see of Natasha Romanoff overall, but I think it is a pretty good send-off, especially in terms of a performance. But I gotta say, as good as Scarlett Johansson is, the real standout of this movie, and I think the person that honestly is so good, almost steals the show from her, is Florence Pugh as her sister Yelena, who, going into this, was actually the performance I was most excited for, because Florence Pugh has just been knocking it out of the park lately with amazing performance after amazing performance, but she also has really shown herself to be a really great character actress. And thankfully, that very much does ring true here. She is excellent as this character. I mean, the way she really transforms into this character of Yelena, someone who is just as badass as Natasha, but is a very different type of character. She is sometimes kind of bratty, and she had a lot more in terms of comedy than I really expected, and you really do see how great Florence Pugh is at handling that. She has really great comedic timing, but there's also a lot of emotional baggage that this character has been through. She's gone through a lot of damage on her own throughout the years, and you really do kind of see her get to open up in her perspective on this family that she's been in and things like that, and how it kind of differs from Natasha's. I thought Pugh did a really great job with that. She was extremely likable as this character. She had some really strong one-liners, but she also gave a really grounded performance. And by the end of this film, I do have to say, this is a character that I'm very happy we are going to see again. They've already announced that she's going to be in Hawkeye. They've already announced that they're going to do a lot more with her, and I'm very happy for that, just to see more of what Pugh ends up doing with this character, because she has such a good understanding of what this character needs to be, but I feel like is only scratching the surface of the true potential of this character. I think there's so much more that they can do with her, and I think we're only just now seeing the beginning of it, and I really do love what Pugh ended up doing here. She absolutely killed it in this film and was a huge standout throughout, as expected, as well as David Harbour. He was the other really big standout in this film for me. He, of course, plays this character Alexei, and he is absolutely hysterical in this film. Harbour's such a likable actor in that way, and I think his comedic beats worked very well. He really does work, and he has very good comedic timing throughout this film. I really liked what he ended up doing here. And Rachel Weisz as well. You know, she's not in this movie as much as the other two, but when she's here, she also is doing a really strong job, and I think the family overall has a really good chemistry. They work very well together, and I like what everyone ended up doing throughout this film, and I think the movie really is worth watching alone just for the performances here. I think all the performances are very strong in this film. Alright, but now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that is the thing that I was actually really excited for. I mean, I didn't really, it kind of seemed like this film was going to be more of this sort of like espionage, sort of Bourne Identity type spy film, and I'll say that right now, Cate Shortland's directing, that's not exactly what she's going for. In fact, what really impressed me about this movie is that this film, while definitely it is about the action, like there definitely is a mission that's going on, it's much more of a family drama than expected, and I think she does a really good job with that. I really did enjoy her directing throughout this film. When the movie needs to get really dark, she really does go for it, because, I mean, obviously, what Natasha and Yelena and all of them went through is really traumatic, and Shortland doesn't at all try to downplay what happened there, and I thought her directing was very strong, but again, she has this really good sort of family dynamic to it, and I thought that her directing was very strong here overall. I really did like what she ended up doing, and so I really did enjoy the directing in this film, but the screenplay as well is one that, like I said, is a very different movie than I overall expected it to be. If you go into this movie and you're expecting like non-stop action and you're expecting this like, crazy spy story that's going on, you might be a little bit disappointed, because honestly, I feel like this film has more in comparison to like The Americans than a typical Marvel movie. And as someone who, is a huge fan of The Americans, it's one of my favorite shows, I'm all for that, because I really like what this film ends up covering. I mean, a huge portion of this film is filling in those gaps of Natasha's childhood, but what the movie mainly concentrates on is the family dynamic, this family that she was in with David Harbour and Rachel Weisz, which she's now realizing was kind of fake. This was sort of something that they did as a way to cover up their identities, as a way to basically cover up their more sort of menacing intent, the people that they were working for. They're more, I would say, they were very deceptive in that way, and getting to see how all of that played out, I thought was really fascinating, but especially when it comes to the two sisters in this film, because Natasha and Yelena had very different experiences on this whole thing. For Natasha, she knows that this was all a con. This was not legit. This was not something that really is, she bought into. She's realized that it was kind of just all an act, and so she doesn't really have that much of an emotional attachment to this at all. This is just kind of like another job for her, and so you can see when it comes to David Harbour and Rachel Weisz, she doesn't really have that fond of an attachment there, and I think that's something the film does very well, but then contrasting that would say Yelena's perspective, who actually did have a very fond experience and looks at this as a real family. And for me, that was the most interesting part of this movie, is when we really do get to see this family that, you know, it's not really, they're not actually, you know, in the technical sense, they're not a real family, but seeing them come together and sort of, you know, reconcile some of the differences that they've had and some of the choices that they've had to make, and sort of, you know, harken back on those, but also contemplate whether or not those were, you know, the right choices to make, how this has affected all of these characters. I thought that's when the movie really was at its best, and thankfully there's a significant portion of this movie that's devoted to that, and I really liked what they ended up doing there. And, you know, getting to see these characters interact as well, I think is really strong, especially Yelena. Like I said, I think Yelena is such a fascinating character in that way. You know, not only is she someone that has had a different experience with the family dynamic, but she's also kind of self-taught herself. She did not have the training that Natasha did. She's done a lot of stuff on her own. She's someone that has had a completely different experience when it comes to, you know, the Red Room and things like that. And I really liked getting into that. And like I said, I think we're only seeing the beginning of this character's true potential. I think there's a lot more that they're going to do with her. I think there's a lot more that they're overall hinting at, and I'm very excited to see what they end up doing with this character, because I'm already a huge fan of her for sure. But also Red Guardian is such a fun character as well, because this is someone that, yeah, obviously he was very much a Russian spy in that way, but he also almost had the strength of Captain America, and he's very frustrated at the Avengers for that reason, because he knows that he can take them down if he needed to, and he's stronger than them. And seeing him sort of grapple with the fact that he is just as strong, but he's a lot older now, and, you know, he's not quite as fit as he used to be, is really funny to watch. And Harbour really does pull it off. And this is yet another character that I really do hope we get to see more of, because there's a lot of untapped potential, I think, when it comes to what they want to do with him. And in this film, it delivers. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't deliver in this film, because he definitely serves his purpose, but I think there's more that they can even do with him. I really am excited to see, you know, if they do bring this character back, what else they're able to do, because he is just such a riot throughout this entire film. There are so many scenes with him where I found myself hysterically laughing. I loved his character a lot. He was just so much fun to watch in this film, and I think they do a really good job with that overall. So like I said, I think the family dynamic in this film is really strong. The actual mission that we're going on here, this is where we get to one of my criticisms with this film, is that the threat itself, you don't really feel it here. You understand, you know, what this means to Natasha, what this means to Yelena, why they want to take down this organization so bad, because it messed with their head. You know, it screwed up their entire childhoods. Like, you understand that for sure. But the looming threat throughout this film, that's not really something that you feel. Taskmaster would think from marketing, is the main villain here. Taskmaster is the one that's behind everything. Well, I'm sorry to say, that's not really the case. Taskmaster is not really the big villain in this film. Taskmaster is much more of just an obstacle that they use that sometimes gets in Natasha's way when she needs to achieve some sort of goal. And I think definitely they serve their purpose, is that, like, they do a good job with Taskmaster, but the actual villain of this movie, you just don't really feel his presence. He feels more like someone that they mention. There's a lot of expository dialogue when it comes to this character, and I'm not gonna lie, I do wish we could have seen more of what he was really doing. You know, what was this character, the evil doings that he was taking part in, the ways that he was, you know, manipulating all of these women and taking advantage of them. You know, we don't really get to see that, and I think that's something they could have dived deeper into. And obviously, like, I know we want to keep these movies somewhat family friendly, but I do think this one could have pushed that a little bit more, and I do think that is an aspect in which the film does lack a bit in terms of its story. But like I said, the characters are really strong here. There's a lot of good work that they do with them, that it doesn't bring it down as much as you think, and the movie is always enjoyable. Like, there was never a point in this movie where I was bored. There was never a point in this movie where I thought it was going too slow. I think this movie is very entertaining throughout, and it really is due to, again, just how good the screenplay really is here. So I do think that the writing here is overall very strong. There's a lot of great dialogue here too. There's a really great gag with Yelena's character and her sort of criticizing something about Natasha, a specific aspect of her as an Avenger. And what they ended up doing with that, I thought was so clever. And they did something different with it every single time. And I really enjoyed what they did with that specific, running gag in the film. I thought it was definitely one of the most successful in this film in terms of in terms of humor overall. I really like what they end up doing there. The other big looming flaw, though, that Black Widow does have, and this is something that unfortunately is just kind of unavoidable when it comes to this film, is that we should have gotten this film a long time ago. This was a film, I think, that, and obviously, yeah, we should have gotten this film a while ago. I'm sure everyone's going to say that. But specifically, I think the timing of this film is a little weird. I think that this is a movie that, for me at least, would have been way much more effective if it was placed before Endgame. If you switch this and Captain Marvel, I don't think that there's as much of a problem here, because there are quite a few moments in this film where things are getting really tense, but we already know Natasha's fate. We already know what's going to happen to her. And so because of that, the film at times can feel a bit inconsequential. There are points where it feels like there just isn't really a lot weighing on this specific story, weighing on this specific conflict. You really are watching it just to see how everything played out and really kind of like filling in the gaps overall. And so I think while the film, for the most part, does a good job of really, diving headfirst into Natasha's past and everything like that, there are definitely points where I felt like, yeah, this probably plays a lot better if I didn't know that she dies in Endgame. Like, if Endgame didn't come out and this came out before then, I actually do think some of the story here would be a little bit more effective overall. Not to say it wasn't, but there are aspects in which I do think that it falls a bit flat in terms of its tension overall. In terms of cinematography, I think this film does overall very much deliver. I do think this film has a very interesting style throughout. I think it works very well in that way. And action sequences, they're not the most groundbreaking in terms of the MCU, but honestly, I don't need every single action sequence in the MCU to be like this big, like grandiose, like action sequence. I just need it to be really entertaining, and I need to be able to buy into the tension. And I did. I do think there are a lot of very well done action sequences here. There's a fight between Natasha and Taskmaster. It happens about like 30 minutes into the film, and I've seen this movie twice now, and on a rewatch especially, I found that sequence especially very gripping, and I thought they did a really good job with that. You've seen in the trailer as well, but there's a two-hander between Yelena and Natasha when they first, interact, and that sequence as well is very tense and very suspenseful, and I definitely found myself very much into that. So I do still think the film does deliver in terms of action sequences. I will say there are a couple effects here that can look a little bit shaky at points. Not bad, just shaky. There's one scene especially I've seen people meme up a bit on Twitter, and yeah, it's not the best, definitely. It's not the best that the MCU has overall delivered, but I think the thing is, when it comes to action sequences, I think they always are really entertaining. I think they're at least really fun to watch, and I can still say that here. So I couldn't really ask for that much more in terms of action sequences. I think the film does overall deliver. The score as well is fantastic here. I really did enjoy the score a lot. It's very powerful. It's a very memorable one. I think Lorna Balfe, that one of those composers that rarely misses. I think he's someone that always delivers a memorable score, and that's very much the case when it comes to this film. I really enjoyed the score that he provided here, and the editing. I think this film overall is pretty well paced. I do think that the first half of the film, at points, it can drag a little bit, and I do think there are some moments where it took a while for me to fully get into it. But once Yelena was introduced and we really went off on like what the plot of this movie was going to be, that's when I really found myself locked in. I think they did a really good job with that overall, and I was pretty much into this film the entire time. So I've already addressed a couple things that I do think weigh this movie down, but the only other flaws I really do have is that there's another character in this film. He's played by O.T. Fagbenle, and nothing against him. I thought that he was a very likable character, but aside from a couple scenes, he really doesn't have much of a purpose in this film. I really didn't see a reason for him to be here, and I feel like you could cut his character out altogether, and not much would change in the grand scheme of things when it comes to this movie. I just didn't find the character of Rick Mason to be one that was all that interesting to me. You know, he's supposed to be like this romantic interest for Natasha, but again, that's another aspect where you don't really care because you know it's not really gonna go anywhere because of, you know, what ends up happening to her. So that's another thing that I don't think really worked here at all, and I think they definitely could have done a better job with that. Also, there is a plot twist that happens in this movie. It's around the third act, and I found that plot twist to be incredibly predictable. There was really nothing here that shocked me. It was something where I could see it coming from a mile away, and it's not that the twist itself was predictable, it's that the way that they handled it, I just thought was kind of clunky, and it felt like this specific twist only happened just so they could have one, and it didn't really feel like it needed to be there overall, so I just wasn't really all that impressed by it. And I will say, the way this film does end as well, as a send-off to Black Widow, it's not exactly the most satisfying. It's not exactly the most, like, fitting end for her character. It kind of just feels like it ends abruptly, and I would have liked it if it was a little bit more profound. I think there was a better way they could have wrapped it up, and the way they did instead, it just didn't really work for me. But I will say, the post-credit scene of this movie has me very excited, and I really liked what they ended up setting up there. That is an area of this film I think that very much did deliver in terms of, you know, really setting up what this is overall leading into. I think that is going to be really strong for sure. But the actual way it ended, I just thought was a little bit lackluster overall. Overall, I do think Black Widow does very much deliver. I think that there's a lot of things that work very well here. Scarlett Johansson, Florence Pugh, and David Harbour are all very strong throughout this film. Those three are really a main reason to watch this one, but also getting to dive deeper into Natasha's family life and really seeing sort of like the hardships that she's gone through, but also seeing the ways that she's processed things versus the way her sister processed things. I think that part of the film is very strong. There's a really good emotional core to it in terms of a family drama that I wasn't really expecting. I do think the film can feel a bit inconsequential at times, and I don't think that it's the strongest in terms of its villain. I think it's probably one of the weaker villains the MCU has had in a while. But for what this is really trying to be, as a send-off to Natasha Romanoff, as her finally getting a solo movie that she honestly should have gotten a long time ago, I think it is very much worth the wait. I think there's a lot of aspects that really do work in this film, and I think it does give you a deeper appreciation for this character that would not have otherwise been there, you know, if this film didn't exist, and simultaneously setting up a little bit more of, you know, what this is really going to tie into, what this is really hinting at, has me very excited. And again, like I said, it's just really great to get to see an MCU film in theaters. It's been too long since we've been able to see that, and I do think as a movie, it does overall very much deliver. I found this film to still be very entertaining. I still was having a lot of fun throughout it, and that's really all I can ask of this film. I think it is overall a very satisfying experience. Maybe it's not as strong as it could have been, and like I said, I do think it falls flat in a few aspects, but overall, I did have a pretty good time with Black Widow, and I am going to give it it a B-. But over, guys, in my review of Black Widow. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie overall. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.